Hey baseball fans, I'm Matt Gross, aka the Rhode Island Rocky fan, and welcome to another episode of Purple Row Video. Now in this one, I'm going to throw a lot at you. I got a lot of tables in this thing, so you just kind of bear with me here for a second. I'll try to explain as much of it as possible, but I think you're going to like it if you go through some of the stuff, because what I specifically want to address here is one of the biggest strengths of the Rockies offense, and it's really one of the less obvious ones. It's not that they have Carlos Gonzalez, Troy Tulowitzki, Dexter Fowler, Willeen Rosario, and Michael Kadire mashing, although that does play into it. It's really what's starting to happen with this lineup is that there's really almost no holes in it. And that is almost more important, in some ways, it's more important than having firepower. You need both to have a truly great lineup. But in some of these tables, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. So basically, what I wanted to measure here is I wanted to measure how much bad is in the Rockies offense, and use on a scale to say, hey, there's less bad in this offense than there's been in years past. And part of the problem is there really was not a statistic available to do that. So I went ahead and I created one. For lack of a better term, I'm calling it drag factor, because I'm measuring how much your bad offense is bringing you down. If you have a better name for it, throw it up there in the comments. We can call it whatever we want. But basically, I want to know how much bad is in the offense. So the closest tool we have to measuring that is WRC+. If you don't know what WRC+ is, I'll put a link to it in the word section down there. But basically, it's OPS park adjusted and put on a scale that's easier to understand, where less than 100 is bad, greater than 100 is good. So what I wanted to look at is, if you want to look at the players who specifically have WRC pluses below 100. The further you're below 100, the worse you are. But when you're trying to measure that on a team total, when you're trying to look at, say, how much bad is an offense as a team, you run into a bit of a problem. Because while WRC plus is really, really good in measuring individuals, when you put that in the context of a team, if you have a bad WRC plus, you're probably not going to be in the lineup for very long. So what you end up with people with all different WRC pluses below 100, with all different sorts of plate appearance numbers. You're going to see that in these tables below. And that creates a problem because it makes it very, very difficult to measure how much bad is in your offense as a team. So what I did, I came up with an equation for what we're calling drag factor. And basically what we're doing is we're taking 100 and subtracting a player's WRC plus. So if it's 50, they're 50 points below average, they're 100 minus 50 is 50. And then you multiply that by the total number of plate appearances they racked up throughout the season. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you a huge number. So then we just divide that by the total number of non-pitcher plate appearances that the team accumulated throughout the year. And basically, you're going to get a score somewhere in 1, 2, 3, somewhere in that. You'll see it in the table. Basically, and if that number comes out 1 or higher, you are dragging the team's offense down. Some players, as you see on here, can rack up drag factor scores of 3, 4, 5, extremely high scores that really, really pull the offense down. But basically, if you don't like math, what we're trying to measure is a combination of being well below average offensively and racking up a ton of playing time. That obviously is really, really bad for you. That poison for a team is what we're actually going to find. So now quickly some of the analysis on it. If you have any questions, by the way, just ask in the comment section, because I hope I explained it somewhat clearly. But if I didn't, please let me know, and we can discuss it more in the comments. But basically what we want to look at here is which years the Rockies had really, really bad drag factor scores. And 2006 and 2011 are two that jump out to me right away. But one of the biggest surprising things is on the flip side is the year they had the lowest drag factor score coming in this year. And it goes throughout their entire franchise. I only posted the tables for the last 10 years. But 2012 was the lowest drag factor score the Rockies had ever had. In other words, that as bad as 2012 was, there was less bad in that offense than there had been in any other year. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense into how we're going into this season. Because, well, last year the pitching and the defense were awful. The Rockies not have a lot of bad in their offense. And the reason why it kind of went under the radar is because if you look on the flip side of this, the obvious part of it is how the Rockies didn't have any real firepower in the offense last year. Case in point, Dexter Fowler led the Rockies last season in WRC plus with 123. Now, if you go back throughout Rockies history, you take every single year, 1993 to 2013, and just pick out the player with the highest WRC plus, with even 100 plate appearances, but you can even go higher than that, it's a minimum plate appearance to qualify. Dexter Fowler's WRC plus of 123 last year was the lowest WRC plus by anybody leading a Rockies offense. So last year they had no firepower. Yet despite the lack of firepower, the Rockies, out of their 20 years history, 1993 to 2012 was actually their sixth best year ever offensively, if you're measuring it by WRC plus, which is a very good way to measure your offense as a whole. And it speaks volumes to how important not having garbage in your lineup is. 2011, it was the flip side version of that. They had a very, very high drag factor that year, in about 14. By the way, the league average is probably somewhere around 12. I haven't done every single team yet, but I think 12, maybe 12 and a half is probably what you generally get as far as average drag factor scores if you did every team in the majors. Like I said, it's a lot of work to tabulate everything, so I can't get an exact number on that yet. But that's basically where you're going to end up. But in any case, the 2011 Rockies had a very, very high drag factor score. And what that did is it completely erased all the production you got from Carlos Gonzalez and Troy Tulowitzki that year. So even though you had two great guys in the lineup, and that was really the big story going into 2011, there was enough of Ty Wigington, Jonathan Herrera, Ian Stewart, etc. to sink this offense to a point where those guys got enough plate appearances to where your offense just was not going to be very, very good. And that became a very, very big problem for that team. Now, 2012, they actually cleaned that up, but it didn't matter because they had no firepower in their offense. The starting pitching was a disaster, and the defense was an embarrassment. So, it didn't matter. But it set up a very, very nice foundation for this year's Rockies team. And that is really, really important when you look at the 2013 Rockies, because now, not only do they have the firepower with Cargo and Tulo and Rosario and Fowler now coming into his own and Kadire having a great year, now they're maintaining this very, very low drag factor score. And if you take a look at the drag factor score, one thing that's very, very important is because the 2013 season is a living, breathing entity right now. It's constantly in flux. Those drag factor scores you see for the players on the list there, in that table down at the bottom, they can still change. Obviously, all the other seasons that they're in the past, they're locked in stone. So, one thing to notice is Chris Nelson has a drag factor score of, I believe, 3.06. I mean, double check that. Yeah, 3.04 right now. So, his drag factor score, because he's no longer with the Rockies, will continue to decrease as the season goes on. Because his plate appearances will represent a smaller and smaller and smaller number of the team's plate appearance, a smaller and smaller percentage of the team's plate appearances before the year is out. And that's very, very important because by the end of the year, that drag factor 3.04 is going to go down to 0.6, meaning that the team's total drag factor score, which is already pretty low right now, has the potential to get even lower. Because if you look at that chart, the 2013 chart, most of Colorado's really bad plate appearances have come from the third base position. And if you look at that, you say, well, now the Rockies have Nolan Arenado there. So Nolan Arenado, even if he's not spectacular, even if he's just average offensively, if he can put up a WRC plus of 100 or greater, just stay average. I think he has the potential to be better than that, as we've seen. But let's say he's average. He is sucking up your weakest position. He's sucking up plate appearances from what was your weakest position. It's no longer the weakest position. So that means that if they stay healthy, and this is why health is so important for this team, as it is every team, you are talking about potentially the lowest drag factor ever, even low in 2012, except now you're combining it with a tremendous amount of firepower in this offense. And when that combination really means that the Colorado has a chance to have their best offense ever. And it also means, if we look at the way this team is constructed right now, if they stay healthy long term, this could go on for several years. Because if you think about it, where are most teams' big drag factor scores going to come from? What positions? They're going to come from up the middle, particularly catcher and shortstop, maybe second base, maybe center field. But those positions are where most of your bad plate appearances come from, right? They're defensive first positions. The Rockies have not only adequate players at those positions, they have above average offensive players at those positions. So what you're talking about now is it's going to be very, very easy if Tulowitzki and Rosario stay healthy to construct teams with low drag factor scores for the next several years, because you're talking about two positions where most of but a large portion of the drag factor scores for most teams are going to come from, and they're not an issue at all for Colorado. That's what's allowing them to do this, and that's why you're seeing these extremely low scores, and I believe it's extremely important because I believe that baseball is a game of outs more than it is a game of runs. And these low drag factor scores basically mean, in short, that we're not giving you many outs easily. You are going to have to earn those outs. And I just believe that if you go long enough at playing at Coors Field and you do not give your opponents easy outs, you are just going to terrorize opposing pitchers because there's just too many obstacles they're going to have to work their way around over most games over the course of the season. So that's just one thing. There are so many interesting things. I could go on talking about this for an hour, looking at all different years. So feel free to comment on anything. Even if you want to go back to 2006, 2007, there's some interesting stuff there. I'll be in the comment section. You could, talk whatever you want. But I just think it's a really, really interesting way to measure how little bad there's going to be in this Rockies offense. I think this drag factor score could go down below 9 once we get to the middle of summer, once Chris Nelson's plate appearances get minimized as we go on. So that's what we're looking at here. I'd like to know what you think. Give me any suggestions, critique it, tell me it's terrible, tell me it's good, tell me whatever you want. So I'll be in the comment section. I'll see you around. All right.